Okay, we've hit midday, so I'll start proceedings. Welcome, everyone. My name's Anthea Middleton. I'm the CEO of Powering Skills Organisation. Welcome to our first Insights for 2025. These are meetings that we hold monthly with the exclusion of December and January. We find that all of those, those 2 months are particularly hectic. So we look forward to being able to present to you once a month on all of the activities that we're currently undertaking and let you know how we're progressing. Before we dive into the content, I'd like to commence by acknowledging the traditional owners, the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on today, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and those emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today. I'm dialing in from Turrbal and Yugara country. Feel free to pop in the chat what country you're listening in from today. We've got a fairly solid agenda ahead of us. We are looking now, can I just confirm, and it could be my view, the PowerPoint slide is not pinned. Oh, there we go. I've clearly done something. I've got that up now. Thanks, Lisa. We wanted to kick off by reviewing where we got to last year and the work that we've been progressing, and look at what we can continue to prioritise against our strategic priorities and provide that update clearly. Whoever's sharing their screen, thank you. It just went to your, it's all right, Lisa Harmer, amateur, welcome, GM, External Relations and Comms. We also want to talk about our workforce planning focus areas. We're in the midst of writing our workforce plan and are very close to doing the next steps of deep consultation with our stakeholder groups to make sure that we understand the context that the data has. Also, we'll look at some next steps and things that we're working on as well. But I wanted to start off by sort of giving you an update of where we are at as an organisation. So happy to go to the next slide, Lisa. So we started the year we started the year with a restructure. So when we were closing out some of the activities at the end of last year, we realised that it was really important for us to mature based on where we are in our learning curve and in the work that we're delivering. So the first 18 months was very much we were in a startup phase, focusing on setting up the business, bringing in the right people to deliver the work, getting out there to meet all of you, our stakeholder network, and to make sure that we were commencing the work that needed to happen in a way that was guided by our stakeholders. As we came out of last year, we realised there's some things that we need to change in order for us to move into the next stage of our maturity, which is where we're at now, to be an evidence-based, action-oriented business out there delivering really good quality work. And so there are a few areas that we've decided to expand upon but also introduce into the business. So under People and Operations, we're building out our Program Management Office. We're currently in recruitment for a number of these roles. But what we really discovered is as we start to deliver more projects, and the complexity increases, but also the how intercorrelated they are. It's really important that we're managing that governance in an appropriate way. So we're currently building out our Program Management Office to make sure that we are running our projects in a governance sound way. The other team that we have also decided to expand is our strategy and engagement team, particularly in industry engagement, our research and policy teams. It's really important that we have the right people in place to be able to connect appropriately and bring us that evidence with which we decide to do the work based on. So that the strategy and engagement team being led by Vicky Gattato is expanding. And we also took the step to consolidate our vet and technical team. So as you know, we had teams doing different work all within TPD land, but structured in different parts of the business. And that made sense when we were starting because we didn't have any projects to work on, but we absolutely needed the technical capability within the organisation. Now that we are, we've matured and we're moving into really our focus is on delivery, it makes sense that that team comes together and is consolidated under Stephen Hall. So that's just some insight into how we have structured so that we can continue to grow and deliver work that we think is going to be world class. And certainly the early indicators show that the work that we're producing is being really well supported by industry and by government. And let's do a deep dive into what that work looks like. So if I can talk through, last year we developed our strategic priorities, and these were developed through a range of consultations. So it started with our board, PSO's board and leadership team. We held a strategy development session to make sure that we took the early work that we'd done before we were formally established and matured that so that we had some clear priorities for the team to focus on. As most of you are aware, there's so much happening in this space. It's really easy to run fast and go down rabbit holes and spiral it out of context. So we wanted to make sure we had some really clear priority areas with which we were basing the work that we were delivering on. Those priorities were then taken to our Strategic Industry Advisory Body, our SIAB. And our SIAB is a really important group to us because part of I think the depth and the richness of this program, the Jobs and Skills Council program, is that making sure we keep a strategic lens on the work that we do so that when we work in a training product or a training package, we're looking to the future. So it will hold its relevancy in 5-10 years' time, whilst keeping, the opportunity to be agile and respond to all of the technological changes that are happening across the industry sectors that we represent. So the Strategic Industry Advisory Body is by application and invitation. It's made up of a really broad spectrum of people across the sector, and that group helps us maintain that strategic lens. So we had initially through the board session, we had 7 strategic priorities. When we worked through it as a group in the SIAB, it was clear that we could actually refine that further to 5, and the 2 that formed the 7 are actually subsets of these 5 strategic priorities. So the dots, the blue, the coral, and the green indicate where we're at, the number of projects that goals that we've set and projects that we're operating against those strategic priorities and where they're at in whether they're in progress, completed, or still planned for the future. And I'll just talk through these priorities. Vicky and Steve are going to do a deep dive in what we're doing against each of them, but just to highlight what each 5 priority means. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat just in time for this meeting. So energy career pathways, what we mean by that is all of the touch points that you can have in your career building a trade to work in the energy sector. So that could be a Vet in Schools certificate 2, a Vet in Schools program. It could be a certificate 2 that you do outside of the high school environment that gives you that taster to determine, is this the right career pathway for you into an apprenticeship? Obviously, the apprenticeship as well across all of the electrical trades, as well as in the gas supply industry. What can we do to continue to support strong, productive, safe apprenticeship pathways within the energy sector, and then moving into what is that post-trade training, cross-skilling, upskilling? What does that look like for a transitioning energy environment? The second strategic priority is vet capability and capacity. This, as many of you know, is a really big passion area of mine. I have deep respect for vocational education trainers. You're a dual qualified occupation, and there's certainly a lot that needs to happen in the system to open up the ability to deliver more training for more apprentices, so we can meet some of the targets that we have. And so there's a few parts to that. It's quite a big beast, and it's certainly something that all of the JSCs have their mind on currently. Strategic workforce planning, you know, this is a core pillar of our business, and the reason why it's a strategic priority is we need to continue to mature and evolve the way that we bring information to our stakeholders, but also how we gather evidence and the contextualization of that. And Vicky will walk us through later on where we're at with our workforce plan and the approach that we're taking. Our fourth strategic priority, and this is not news to anyone, it's diversity and belonging in the workplace. We know that there's shifts happening in women participating in trades. We have a research paper that's going to be released soon that shows that actually there is a really positive story of First Nations people's participation in energy trades, but we're a long way off from being good at this and doing well. So this is a priority area for us where we really want to elevate the conversation so that it is, we connect with our JSC partners and we connect with the broader industry sector to develop strategies and programs that are appropriate. And the final one is transitioning from existing to decarbonising technologies. And I'll own, we were all a bit woolly on this one. We put it down. We didn't quite nail what we really wanted to do with this until recently. And for us, it's about how do we help the workforce transition out of job roles that are reliant on fossil fuels into a clean energy economy. And that is interwoven in the other strategic priorities, but it's worth it standalone because we want to make sure that there's a just transition for the worker and for the apprentice. So that's there's still a lot of work emerging out of that, but certainly a priority area for us. Now I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to do a deep dive on that first strategic priority. Thanks, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you, Anthea. So Anthea highlighted how we got to some of these positions. So out of the 6 goals, there were 13 activities that fell out of that space, and we've actually made progress on 6 of those, and you can clearly see them up there on the board. One thing I probably would just highlight in this section here is having a think about how we make things in line with what your feedback has been to us. And the Certificate 2 Project 1 is one in particular that we've received great feedback. Arguably, some of the things that we already knew we're starting to see now play out in that project. And there'll certainly be a bit more in that when it comes to looking at how we address both the school-based students as well as the post-secondary school student. The other big thing that we looked at through this, and I'm just going to drop a crumb here, and we'll come back to it a bit later on, is that when we started looking at some of these training products, we recognized pretty quickly that as soon as we touched one, a bit like a house of cards, they all started to collapse around us. I did liken the term the other day to playing Jenga with jelly. And that's sort of where we're at with this one, because arguably we don't want to create churn in the industry. We don't want to have training products being updated every 6 months and driving all of you insane in the RTO world. So we're looking at a bit of a plan for that, and we'll come back to that one shortly. So I'll hand over Vicky now, because she's going to handle the next 2.
Thanks, Steve. So vet capacity and capability, there's a lot of work that's been happening in this area. Qualification reform, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. And there were 5 activities that came from that. One of them, you can see that's the one that in green that's been checked out as having being completed. There was a report we had to write last year, and that has been achieved. Of course, there is much more work to come out of qualification reform that we haven't yet included here, but please stay tuned for that. That will be coming down the pipeline. So 9 goals and 30 activities, 16 activities progressed or completed. A lot of these are linked to the VET Workforce Blueprint. In fact, all of them except qualification reform. If they haven't started yet, it's because that we haven't broached them in our project yet, but they are coming down the line, and we expect that all of these would be blue or green probably by mid-year. You know, our team at the moment is going to various locations around Australia, and we're running online and in-person roundtables around the VET Workforce Blueprint and gathering a lot of data. We really, you know, thank people for their input into that. It's been very worthwhile. So next slide. The strategic workforce planning, and we'll do a bit of a deep dive into where we're at with strategic workforce planning after this section, but 12 goals and 12 activities identified. They're directly linked to each one of those goals, and there's 9 activities in progress or completed. One of them was the 2024 workforce plan. And as we know, we're on the 2025 workforce plan at the moment. We are looking at new data sets as well, the SARA data, which we will show you a snippet of later on. There's evidence from the VET Workforce Blueprint that is going to be incorporated into strategic workforce planning. And there's also a number of research papers. If you have not gone to our website, we have a number of research papers that are currently up there, Elevating Diversity, and a self-employment paper. Coming down the line is a First Nations participation paper as well. We will intermittently throughout the year be releasing research papers that deep dive on subject matter which, you know, we need to investigate more. So if you didn't look at the Elevating Diversity, that was on the news. It sort of attracted a little bit of media from around the country. So, you know, whenever we can bring attention to some of the issues we have at PSO and the broader network, we'll be happy to do so. Next slide there, Lisa.
That's back to me. So we know that diversity and belonging in the workplace is something that many of our stakeholders are passionate about, and rightly so. We know that we have some major issues in our workforce, particularly where it comes to gender imbalances, and we want to encourage more women, but also to First Nations persons. We know people who have a language other than English as their first, and even disability. How do we incorporate that into the world? And one of the things that we're seeing happening across industry, including in such things as development of Australian standards, amongst others, is a move to a more neutral language. And that's now the lens that we're taking across all of our training package development, is how can we ensure that the language we're using in training products is not going to create a barrier, whether that be through cultural or just through gendered norms. And so a good example of that is that for years we've used the terms male and female socket. I get it. It's a very easy one to fall into. However, when you think about the actual form and function of those things, they are a socket and they are an outlet and they're a plug. And when you look at how you define those things, they could be a 2-pin plug, a 3-pin plug. Okay, well, you might want to stick yourself on mute there. But that is the way that Australian standards are moving, as well as to change the language to the form and fit and function of what that equipment is. So certainly something that we want to try and incorporate across all of our training packages. Additionally, to looking at whether or not there's opportunities to create bespoke products that might actually work for a priority cohort who might have been excluded through other means through training package design in the past. So some of those things are things that we will definitely looking back across the next couple of months. If we move to the next slide there, the other one that we're looking at here is transitioning from those existing to decarbonisation technologies. Anthea sort of highlighted it. It's a bit of a mouthful and even a bit of a mindful to get your head around. What are we talking about when we get there? But one of the things we are really trying to get our head around is well, when we look at just transition, what are the skill sets that we see in certain areas? We know that there's been some great work by people like the Clean Energy Council in creating mapping documents for how we can see what a person has in that skill set and where they can go with it in the training packages, particularly if they're skilling and upskilling into an occupation that they may not be able to continue on due to decarbonisation. So expect to see a bit more in this. We've got a few more products that we'll be putting through, as well as some research projects as well around these to try and map out and make sure that we do have that just transition for workers in the fossil fuel industry. So that moves us on to the next slide. And I'll throw back to Anthea just to wrap this section up.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Vicky. I thought it'd be good to, I mean, that's a lot of information at you. It's a good time to pause and sense check if you've got any questions, any comments. There's two sort of main ways with which to do that. Raise your hand and we'll throw to you on camera or via the chat. It's also a good reminder we do record these sessions. They are made available on our website post our insights, so those that have missed can catch up on the work that we're doing. Any comments from the audience? Okay, we can move on. And again, feel free to ask questions in the chat channel as we go through. Happy to field them. This one's back to Steve. We wanted to showcase how we actually are working through our product reviews and the steps that we undertake. So over to you, Steve.
Thanks again, Anthea. So I did drop the crumb before, and here's the whole cookie now. When we started playing in the training product space, we recognized pretty quickly, as we said, that if we touch one thing, we end up having to touch them all. And for those of you who went through the old IRC, TACs and tags and other iterations in previous training product development models, you'll know that a lot of time can be spent working your way through these things, and they don't necessarily follow a rhyme or reason, particularly too when we think of something like the way that training packages interconnect. So we know for a fact that the UEE has many inputs into it and is used across many different packages, not just the ones that PSO look after. So to, again, avoid that churn and putting unnecessary pressure on training organisations to implement a training package, we made the decision to look at a more strategic approach to the way we handle this. And at the heart of everything we do, Anthea has mentioned this numerous times, we're an evidence-based organisation. We're going to do the research. We want to find out everything we can before we put a false step. Because in all honesty, sometimes when the best intentions are made, they actually go awry when you don't realize something. So our goal is to really put some serious research, and that's going to require us to talk to you in many different ways, shapes and formats. So please expect that over the next period of time, we're going to be really reaching out to you and finding out, well, what is it that you have issues with in our training products across the board that we could address over a time period. And that would include things such as additional technologies, barriers to entry, barriers to completion, all of these things that we have in there. I'll probably come back to your point at the end of this section, Rebecca, if I can. Also, we want to then use that to consolidate and set up our technical committees. Now, we appreciate that setting up technical committees is a massive ask of you as industry. Without you, we cannot actually do the work. We want to make sure that we're capturing not just the view of one sector, such as RTOs or industry employers or industry associations, but looking at the broader stakeholders that input into this. So when we're setting up our technical committees, we'll be asking a bit more of you in terms of what you can actually bring to the table and what you are bringing to the table, so that we can ensure that we have a good balance across those technical committees and ensure that we are meeting the needs of all industry. Of course, at the end of that, we actually have work to do, and that's the training product development. So starting with the UEE training package, and the reason we're starting with that one is probably to some degree to deal with some of the things you've asked in your question there, Rebecca. We know that some of the quals existing actually have some issues: superseded units, deleted units, units that are no longer appropriate, and some that have changed due to licensing requirements. So we anticipate a 25 release for some of those. It will be only fixing up the issues that we currently have with those. with the greater thought that by 2027 we're planning to release. So that means over the mid part of this year, all the way through into December 26, we will be looking at updating all of those UEE training packages just to get them right. And then we will release them towards the end of next year so that they are ready for you to implement and put into your organizations. We'll want to hear how transition periods will work for you. I know transition has been a dirty word for some training providers, but ultimately we want to make sure that it's as easy and painless for you as possible. We appreciate there is huge costs for RTOs when they're moving from one training package to another. So by flagging this early and working along with all of the stakeholders, and particularly our RTOs when it comes to looking at the implementation, we're going to try and make sure that it is as painless as possible, but also to try and reduce the amount of transition period or the length of that transition period. For those of you who weren't aware, when we went from the 11 to the 20 packages, particularly in the UEE, it took almost 4 years for it to completely wash through the system. So we actually had people still being trained in the 11 package last year. That's a fault of the total system. It's no individual organization's fault, but the way that the model worked, it just wasn't as good as it is now. So we now have the opportunity to really build in a way for you as RTOs to be able to implement it, but also to work with our employers to make sure that they have a clear understanding of what's involved and what's the obligations on them. And once we complete the UEE, we're moving straight into the GP and T components. So don't panic for our wonderful gas workers. They have had an update a bit later than the others. And for our ESI teams, both in generation, transmission, distribution, we'll also be addressing all of the issues you have. One last thing just to sort of tighten this up and finish it off is that we've also got the opportunity to be able to fix and improve some of the qualifications. So a great one, and for those of you who work in the, or I guess, domestic automation and integration systems, we've done some great work. Our team, hats off to them, by engaging with CEDIA and really trying to build a model of what they need in their industry, but also align it with some of their industry training packages. So one of the most exciting things is taking industry training and incorporating it into the training product development space so that a national qualification also can give you an industry accreditation. So looking at how we can do a bit more of that as well. So watch this space. It was, it's again, a lot of information to take on in one hit, but certainly we're excited about it. And we think it'll actually bring great benefit to industry, but also to without unnecessarily giving you headaches, migraines, and all the other terrible things that come from a very hard transition period. So we'll pause there. Is there any questions? Admittedly, I've been looking at the screen and not looking at the chat, but I'll have a wee look at the chat now if there's any questions there, or if anyone's got a hands up. Jordan, your question? Yes.
Pete's going to write a reply to that one.
Beautiful.
Pete Adams. Yeah.
Excellent. And workplace evidence will certainly be something that we have to incorporate into it. Just a quick word on workplace evidence. Under the new training package frameworks and the policies that dictate how we can develop training packages, any time that workplace evidence is required to be incorporated into a training product, there's another set of conditions that need to be met. Certainly, we know for licensing outcomes that is an absolute must, and we've heard loud and clear there's no intention to remove any kind of workplace evidence gathering from any of our licensed qualifications, and if they're needed in others, then certainly that's something we can do. And for Craig, we'll assure one of our team will definitely contact you, as you've got a thumbs up there. That looks like it for the questions. So back to you, Anthea.
Thanks, Steve. And I'd like to also say that you can, on our website, all of the activities show which phase of that consultation approach that we're in. And I'm also very pleased to say that our first major training package change, that was the RA51 sitting in the air conditioning training package, is now with the ministers for approval. So that's been approved. Our changes there have been approved by every state and territory senior responsible officer. And it's just in the laps of the gods, shall we say, for ministerial approval across Australia. But we're really happy with the progress we've made on that. And I would like to obviously applaud the team, but really acknowledge the great work that the Dewar Assurance Function are doing. You know, they are a small but mighty team, and they are very committed to working with us and the other JSCs to, you know, to improve the process and iterate as we go. So it's been a very positive experience, and we've got a few more sitting there in the pipeline that are very close to that next step as well. So watch this space. Certainly Next Insights will be able to let you know how we've progressed some of the other training packages. All right, so let's talk about the workforce plan. As I've mentioned, this is a core pillar of the work we do, and it really provides us the evidence base with which to go and, you know, do some work. We evaluated the 2024 workforce plan to look at, well, of the 44 actions that we identified, where did they sit across our 4 key pillars? It's unsurprising to me that nearly half of the actions that were taken are in workforce planning, and because I think what it shows is where we're at in our maturity of that particular function. We want to continue to grow and improve and iterate the work that we do, so that with each year we're adding value back into the system, and so that there's evidence with which people outside of the JSCs can make effective decisions with. So I think the key difference in the 2025 workforce plan to the 2024 workforce plan is that this year we're really moving to understanding the workforce implications on the training packages and making sure that they're clearly identified, as well as doing a deeper dive in the states and territories. And I know Vicky will talk more about that in this section. I'll pause there for the next slide. So there's a number of ways with which we're going to, that we consult and that we collaborate. I'll hand over to Vicky to lead us in this conversation. Thanks, Vicky.
Thanks, Anthea. So there's a number of ways, and I would really like to preface this with our workforce plan. You know, this is our 3rd round of this. This is the year that I've decided to call it for better consultation and collaboration, and that's already started. We've already started to do, in the workforce survey will be out there. I'll talk a bit about that in a sec. We're doing roundtables and getting feedback on this, and we really want to ensure that we've consulted and collaborated. I'll go into that a bit more later on. So Anthea alluded to our strategic industry advisory body, and they're acting as our steerco for the paper. We've had a number of workshops. That's just, I know that's really hard to read, but, you know, just so you know that we do have a panel of experts from across industry that are advising us on a number of these key things. So apart from that, we also have the survey. We've got state and territory roundtables. You know, we just had one this week in Tasmania. There will be a consultation paper for review, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll notify everyone. And there's also an opportunity to have a one-on-one meeting and book in a meeting with us through our website. So if you wanted to talk further about the issues. So, you know, that data collection survey also incorporates the Vet Workforce Blueprint information on that as well. You know, that's only been in release since Monday, and we've already had, you know, close to 80 replies on that already. So if you haven't popped on to that, and we will show you where to go in a second, please do so. So next slide. So with regards to the workforce plan, one of the big differences in it is that we will have a state and territory view. We didn't have that in the previous 2 workforce plans. And at the same time, we are building our capability in understanding the policy landscape across Australia. And a real good case in point is what's recently happened in Queensland with the change in government and the Liberal government. So, you know, for what we know, this table here, which was put out in this diagram, September 2024, is now changed, especially in Queensland. So their targets is still net zero by 2050, but at the moment where it sits is there are no interim targets that have been published as yet. So, you know, for PSO and our workforce planning, we need to really quickly pivot on that, ensure that we can react to the states and territories' change in policy and approaches, and that we can then adjust our workforce planning to cater for that. That's really what we're about, is reacting to the position in every state and territory as quickly as possible. Next slide. So, we've shown you something like this before in the past, and this is internet job listings across Australia, and they usually take a 3-month average across a year. And so Australia's job market saw a dip in job ads in December, which is a trend of year-long deadlines. It's a year-long declines. It's a trend at that time. However, it's still 25% higher than in 2019, where we saw a huge dip pre-COVID. And there was recently a 2.5% drop in online job ads, and this downturn was felt across most states and territories in December, but Tasmania and ACT have led the decreases, and it's especially been seen in the technicians and trade workers. However, if we jump forward, and it's not on this one, but we look at January 2025 job advertisements, they've increased by 4%. These dips are fairly consistent with the December quarter of each year, and then it tends to trend back up as the year progresses. There are ongoing shortages. Electricians, we've seen shortage most years since 1986. And electrical engineers, in a contrast, you can see a steady increase there. Construction managers have been in shortage since 2019, and architectural, building and surveying technicians haven't been listed as having a shortage. So this is a really good understanding of the landscape, and you can see that pattern that emerges in our economy. Next slide, please. So I alluded earlier to new data sets, and this is called SERA data. And if you come to our summit, we'll be talking about this deeper. And let me explain this to you. So SERA stands for the Survey of Employers Who Have Recently Advertised, undertaken by the Social Research Centre, and JSA use this data in a lot of their studies. It collects information on recruitment experiences from agencies who have recently advertised a vacancy, and it's actually random. The sample and how they take this sample is actually randomised. This data produces insights on current labour market conditions, and this is a real simple pie charts. We'll find a different way of showing this, but this is a simple way of showing it. It produces insight on current labour market conditions and identifies occupations and sectors that experience skill shortages. They are asked, so what the recruitment agencies are asked, if candidates are not chosen, would they have been suitable? And this is for suitable applicants. So over the 2 years from 23 to 24, vacancies from electricians attracted an average of 3.4 qualified applicants per vacancy, of which 1.5 were considered to be suitable. So think about that for a second. So suitable applicants are those who have the qualifications, skills, and experience to do the job. So this means that for every vacancy advertised, there is an average of 2 qualified and licensed electricians. However, they might lack something element essential for the role that the recruitment agency saw. So what does this mean for us? Are there mechanisms out there to exist or funnel those who miss out to other areas? And what this data does not show this is whether those people who were nearly there got another job somewhere else. We don't necessarily have that data. The other thing it could highlight, is there a gap in training to bring these people up to speed? So we don't know what that gap in training looks like, but it's really interesting to see that there are people applying for jobs. Anthea.
I think this is a good conversation piece, because I certainly know with electricians that it's a common conversation around, just because you are an electrician and you've completed your apprenticeship and you hold the full qualification license doesn't mean that there's portability of that skill across industry sectors. Because if you've been working for a decade in, say, domestic or light commercial, moving into a heavy industrial or mining role, occupation, is actually quite difficult, because it's not about the license that you hold and the capability of being able to do the full electrical work under that license. It's about there isn't the experience. There's a capability gap there, or a perceived capability gap around the experiences. And I think it highlights that there is an ongoing portability of transfer of experience or across different industry sectors. And we certainly hear that a lot in the electrical trades. It's similar within electrical engineering, but I think the other component to that is the skilled migration. And we do know through Engineers Australia and a lot of the reports that have been carried out within engineering, that the engineering degree or qualification that you might receive overseas does not translate to the electrical engineers required in Australia. And so there's opportunities here to understand how we, especially in electrical, what is the skills gap or the upskilling that could happen through skill sets and higher qualifications. Similarly with electrical engineering, what is the pathway to transition from a degree that you might have gathered in another country, and how does it become equivalent in Australia? So I think there's a lot of conversation there that we can still have, particularly because if we do, if we look at the shortages as they are, or and then the shortages that are proposed based on the net zero transition, having a licensed worker that can be upskilled quickly to work safely and productively in another sector is going to be really important. Just wanted to give you my 2 cents.
Thank you. And one of our tasks was to look at Jobs and Skills Australia use this data, very well. And part of our what we're trying to do is find out more data rather past the usual suspects of data that you've seen in reports. So this is a bit of an outline of our workforce plan. There's no real surprises here. It's kind of what workforce planning is 101. So it's going to comprise of energy subsector workforces, albeit with probably a little bit of a different spin on it from what you saw last year. Some cross-sector opportunities. We know so much more than we do 12 months ago. Like, this industry moves so fast, and I feel like every day we're finding out new things. It's going to look at some career paths and the data around that. One of the new sections in it, as I alluded to earlier, was state and territory views. If you come along to the summit, you will also get a bit of a digital show bag on state and territory views as well, like a one-pager. Organisations, as we're working with organisations such as the Net Zero Economy Agency, they do really localised work around res zones, around decommissioning coal-fired power stations, around how how the country transitions that workforce into different occupations. And the other thing we're going to look at is some case studies. So, the case studies last year were very personalised, about people. We're going to look at programs, so successful programs. For example, we're going to look at diversity programs at work is going to be one of the stories that we pull into the case studies here. We're looking at having case studies on really successful transition things in the market. There might all be something there we pull in from the Vet Workforce Blueprint. So that's the makeup of the 2025 workforce plan. But how can you get involved? So next slide, please. So we have a survey out at the moment, and I think if someone might want to pop the link to our website, if you can't get in on the code, you could go through our website as well. You know, if you have a say, you identify the industry you're from, you know, we look at all of this data. Please have your say. You know, the more data we get, the more valid it becomes. So please put your 2 cents. It takes a little while to fill in, you know, it takes about half an hour or so to put your thoughts in there. Put it out to your the groups of people that you interact with. We don't mind how far and wide that you put this. We really want to increase our data and our intellectual knowledge in this area. Anthea?
Thanks, Vicky. And I wanted to also reiterate, if you're keen to have a one-to-one conversation with us, that's available as well. All of our details are on the website. There are other consultation mechanisms as well. This is one format. We do encourage you to fill it in because it does give us that direct from your voice and in your words feedback, but there's also further consultation that we'll be doing in one-to-ones, small groups, online sessions, etc. But the quality of the research that we produce is really dependent on the quality of feedback that we get, and again, we can build out the quantitative data. It's the qualitative context that we get from all of you and your voices that make the work that we do matter. I'll hand over now a quick update from Lisa Harmer.
Hi everyone, just wanted to have a quick chat about the summit that's happening next week. Firstly, thank you for the overwhelming interest in coming along. We're really pleased to see that this is something that you're interested in hearing about. Registrations have now closed, so we apologise if you did miss out on this, but we are really keen to meet those of you who have signed up and are coming along. Just a reminder that day one is for audiences for everyone, and day two is that more kind of technical audience. So we've got lots of wonderful keynote speakers, we've got great panels happening, and of course it's a chance for PSO to really talk through what we're up to too. So look forward to meeting you all in person next week.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, we're very much looking forward to it. That's the close of our session. I'm happy to pause here if there are any questions that haven't been answered. Certainly appreciate the conversation in the chat. We love that, and we encourage as much participation as possible. I'm happy to take some questions. And if there aren't any, we'll close the session there. And once again, thank you. We love our monthly insights, even though it creeps up on us. It feels like it's once a week, not once a month, but we certainly love the opportunity to showcase what we're doing and hear your thoughts and get your feedback. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of
Anthea,
week.
there's a question there.
Oh, great. Sorry, I wasn't even paying attention.
From Peter, I have a question about the UET rescue and refresher units. Is there any update? Oh, it's pinging up away from me as I'm trying to read it. Are there any updates on what the changes will be and what this means for RTOs?
Great question. Who from the PSO team would like to respond to that?
I can, Anthea.
Thanks, Christina.
We're just currently reviewing our assurance submission, and that will be going to Anthea for CEO approval for us to submit to JUA and to be reviewed and hopefully approved for Skills Minister. So we're right at the end. Peter?
And what will that mean for the colleges, Christina, once that's approved by the Skills Minister? And look, that's the process there. It is about, look, realistically 6 weeks. Because it does go to all of the state and territory and the federal minister for approval. But Christina, what can the colleges expect?
So what that will mean is that the current UET units will go into transition. The superseded version is still, the transition date has been extended to October of this year. So that still stands. It will be the current version will go into a transition of 12 months into these new units because it has been a major change. So that means for an RTO, you've got that 12-month transition period once it's released up onto TGA, and like Anthea said, it takes roughly 6 weeks to go through the assurance process with the skilled ministers. And so,
Thanks, Christina. And sorry to put you on the spot. One last time. Well, might not be. The direct question Peter is asking is, has the prereq been removed, and has anything else been added?
prerequisite. Yes, we'll put Peter, I can put a link in the chat. I am sorry, I am at a swim event today. So if you can hear that, I do apologize.
That's okay. Christina, shall we, we can pop the link to the website where all of the details are. Would that be useful?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
Great, thanks. Steve, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I might grab the question from Neil just in relation to battery vehicles fitting into the UEE qualification. Just the AUR package is the one that looks after electric vehicles. While I appreciate there are voltages that are greater than the 1,000 volts, and they go many thousands and thousands of volts above that one. The reality is that legislation in most jurisdictions dictates that anything with wheels and can move is still not part of the electrical installation. But there's lots of work happening in this space. So while I say that, it may not stay that way. But for the present, the AUR package is what's looking after any EV. I will also highlight that that's just the vehicle itself. Anything to do with charging infrastructure, including vehicle to grid, that falls back under the electrical installation and back under the UEE. So there's a little bit of work to do in that space as well. But arguably, it's the legislation that dictates what type of training package is required. And at the moment, it's still quite delineated that anything with wheels is AUR.
Thanks, Steve. I missed that one, so good catch. Wonderful. Okay, once again, thank you. We really genuinely appreciate it, and we'll see you all again in a month's time, if not before, hopefully next week. Take care, everyone.